Good morning, good morning, good morning. Again, I hope you're enjoying these videos. Yeah, I've got a comment here. Yeah, Iridology Online's been there. I will tell you, when you come to Iridology, keep in mind there's going to be different thoughts on the way you read eyes. There are differences out there in thoughts on Iridology. I'm going to show you one case here, a famous magician's wife's case, that just tremendous changes in the eye, and I'll have three of them to show you, and to show you the tremendous differences that you can make in the color and the fibers of the eye. But yeah, Iridology is simple. Keep it simple. Don't try to read too much into it, because that can be problematic. And then there's some people that have gotten out of balance with it and start telling people that they drove their car down to the grocery store yesterday by looking at their eye. I had one German guy tell somebody they'd been on a trip for a couple of weeks. I mean, you know, balance, 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 I will tell you. Yeah, I'm going to rip through these questions again here. And yes, this comment today on the lymph node 2. We probably should have some kind of warning label. We really haven't been aware of it that long. This is a relatively new formula that I've had out, in the sense that we just went from liquids to capsules. Who would have thought? You know, so very aggressive. And you had commented with your skin. Yeah, I mean, it didn't hurt you, but very aggressive. I remember once we had this young baby really in trouble, and the parents were so aggressive that the skin started peeling off. I mean, it grew back beautiful, but that's what I mean about weaknesses. You get too aggressive in detox and it'll strip you down, because it'll literally strip the weaknesses out. Remember the story about the girl and her fingernails fell off? And I've seen cases where I've told you a pancreatic case where the teeth all got loose and abscesses all over. And I mean, the body's going to transform. And that's what people don't understand about detox. So sorry about anybody that had trouble with the lymph node 2 formula, but real powerful. We had no idea either, you know. We had it in tincture for years and never had a problem. Always thought it was real good, you know. So, yeah, that's herbs can get... I learned one thing. Don't ever underestimate herbs, because they will literally kick your butt. They're great, but they can kick your butt. I remember I went down in a coma, almost near a coma, with Peruvian bark, and I've always wanted to call Christopher's son and say, get that out of your book, because it is too dangerous of an herb to have out there for people to have some idea that they could use it, because it's about dosages when it comes into real strong toxic herbs. And there's not a lot of them, and of course I looked all through my repertoire years ago to see if anything could have any toxic effects, and I've never found any. It's just that this formula and that at that level can kick butt. But so I wanted to go through these, and so many great questions here. I'm loving it. You guys are smarting up and getting more questions. One question here that I want to address first. Somebody asked me, here was one, is it possible to have an out-of-body experience at any stage of health? Absolutely. Absolutely. And they can come when you least expect it, especially if you're thinking more about that. I think Dr. Oz has got a program on today about out-of-body experiences. I'm not sure how to take it from the commercial, because it looks like he's trying to show it's hooked to brain synapses and the shutdowns of these synapses. But then I think it went on to something that he had an experience about, an out-of-body experience or something. I'm not sure. You have to watch Dr. Oz today. I think it's on today. And it talks about out-of-body experiences. But there's been plenty of books written about it from cardiologists and heart surgeons in reference to near-death experiences on the table. So the thought has always been, of course, if you can have an out-of-body experience in a near-death situation, why can't you have it now? What shakes you out of the body? Why can't you learn to just move your attention away from your physical body? And this ties into the question that someone asked me, how do you genetically regenerate cells? And I've covered this before, but I'm just going to tap on that lightly because... and I don't want to burn up too much time on this one because it's kind of linked between the spiritual one and the health one, if you can separate those two. That's why I say that even if you're in Christianity, if you're in Buddhism, of course they're much more open to that, but in Islamic teachings, it doesn't matter. We have to start expanding the way we see the Supreme Being. What man's doing is limiting the Supreme Being, and it's an insult to the Supreme Being. We have to understand that something, just look at this one physical universe, and you see how many galaxies, how many planets. I mean, we have no clue. When some scientist is dropping sand out of her hand saying there's 1 billion planets for every grain of sand on this planet, and you think how many grains of sand could possibly be on this planet, your mind could not comprehend anything like that. So I've always thought that it's important for man to understand the fundamental makeup of creation. Very, very important, and I think you can prove it in any way you look at that. And that you have to separate your physical body from your emotions and from your thoughts, and then you from all three of those things. You really have to consider, for those of us that already know and have experienced these things, but from an intellectual viewpoint, you have to look at this and say, okay, the physical body is just physical science, it's just chemistry and physics. And remember, we've talked about in quantum physics that they proved that all matter is really nothing but frequencies of electromagnetic energy. Sometimes you can't see energy. How do you define consciousness or your awareness? You know, you can't define it in physical terms. There's no way. And for scientists to do that just shows the constipation of science. Can't do it anymore. You can't stay constipated in science. That's dark agey stuff. You must go beyond that and understand that there is awareness, there's life beyond physical matter. Physical matter is probably the most inert matter, or inert area of God there is. The most constipated, the most restricted area of creation there is. This area you're in right now in the physical body. But you have emotions. How do you describe emotions? There's few words that describe them. Feelings, sensory perception. We can say, well, our senses. No. Then that is a whole level of awareness, emotional awareness. It's called the astral world, but it is the emotional component of a person connected to the adrenal glands. Then you have the thought, the mind, and the mind has been divided up into 3 separate major planes. You have the causal mind, which is where life is conceived in creation. And I've talked about the universal mind. That's plugging into God's universal mind, the mind of God, if you want to call it that way, loosely speaking. So you have to understand that for God to create anything, it has to go through several layers, several processes, just like you do. We talked about this before, where you have thought, and then you have to have something that motivates thought. That's emotions. And then at the final creation is in this level, but it's also being created in all these finer, more etheric worlds. That's why when you have a limb removed, you have the phantom limb syndrome, where you still feel an arm that's been cut off, because it still exists in the emotional body. It still exists in the mental body. And you can't see it physically, but you can see it astrally. You can see it electrically. So it's just understanding the way creation is put together, and that not even a cell can be at this level without emotions and thought. There's impossible. Nothing can be at this level that doesn't have those three components to them. It's essential. And so it's just understanding that energy and awareness is the fundamental essence of life. And if you look at a cell and consider a cell like a person, when we come into this world, we're totally conditioned by our parents, our society, the town we live in, our government, how patriotic we are. Some people, we look at some people and go, you really believe that? You know, and some countries are just stifle the growth that their people can have. They brainwash them from kids that America is bad or this is bad or whatever. And so we have this fundamental conditioning of the mind and emotions. This sets the journey for the individual soul and what that soul is going to experience and what that soul pulls into them. Cells are exactly the same way, except we call it genetics. And this genetic pattern, this genetic memory pattern, comes out of the family genes. You can't deny that. Everybody looks like their parents in some way or another, some almost exactly. Your little dad, little mom, maybe a little grandmother. Oh, look, she's got her Aunt Hilda's nose. You know, I mean, this is the way it is. But can you take your memories and when you're conditioning and drop that and go beyond into, oh, look, America's not so bad, it's just corruption, you know, or whatever? Can you go beyond your idealisms? A lot of people are letting the fundamental Christianity down and going more into the Jesus Christianity, which is more agnostic, which is more etheric, which teaches my Father's mansion has many rooms, which teaches more of an etheric look. And so people are dropping the very constipated fundamental type of thinking. And it's essential if you want to grow and experience God, because the fundamentals have accentuated the ego and made people think they're the great ones and no one else is. And that kind of thinking is, you know, has to be buried, just like the medical community and the way they treat this phantom idea of diseases. We must, as a civilization on this planet at this level, go further. If God wants to experience greater things, we as souls have to open ourselves up to that, but maybe everything is as it should be. But understanding genetics is as important as understanding that everything is at levels of awareness. And the only thing I can tell you about that is you have to go to quantum physics and say that all things are frequencies of energy, and energy has intelligence. And so it's very difficult for the average person to associate something they can't see physically with the way it's running etherically, such as the mind. And thoughts and emotions. We know we've got them. We know we've got memories, but we know animals have memories. We know plants have memories. We know cells have memories. But we know those memories can be increased, can expand by giving the greater experience. And a good example of this, if I sucked half the energy out of your body, the lights would start to dim. You would start to isolate into a world of darkness, and your body would start shriveling up. If I pump you twice as much energy as you have right now, you start seeing things you never saw before. And this is where meditation, proper prayer, things come in like that, because when you stop thinking, you expand. You start seeing things you didn't see before. You start understanding things because you've dropped the conditioning of thought and emotions. You've dropped what you thought was true. You've dropped what you were told was true. And now you're seeing truth. And that makes a big difference in your ability to understand God and your relationship with others and with all of life. And then you start to see people that have done that start seeing everything as more one.